Water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, Katara spoke this monologue to you, and it has been burned into your memory ever since, to the point you can recite it at will, unprompted. And you have. You know you have. The story behind this world besieged by war, paired with gorgeous art and animation that really drives the story home, can't help but engross you, while also getting you invested in the journey that you're about to embark upon. Opening monologues are a tricky trope. On the one hand, front-loading your exposition can easily go wrong, boring your audience to death with the tale of how the gods installed a highly effective, innovative aqueduct system, with your audience dying and then coming back from the grave simply to ask, "Why the fuck did you bore me like that?" But on the other hand, it allows you to effectively give your audience vital information needed to understand your story right out the gate. People often tout the show don't tell rule without fully understanding what it means, or why it came into popular usage to begin with. Telling has its place alongside showing, allowing the audience to more quickly understand how the world works more palatably. The key is to know what would work better simply told, and what would work better shown. Avatar does a great job in avoiding flat-out info dumps, which would bore the audience and make them bail before they could even get invested. Most information through the show is woven into character actions and conversations, trusting the audience to follow along if they're given enough information to work with. But when they do decide to tell you what's going on straight out, they know how to make it engaging by communicating it as a story. And so today we're going to talk about why the opening monologue of Avatar: The Last Airbender is so iconic, how it makes the story far more accessible to new viewers without sacrificing quality. Before we begin, ciao! My name's Thomas, aka the Unicorn of War, and I make reviews and video essays about the media that I enjoy. From Avatar to Winx Club to Fairy Tail and the Tales series, I mostly just ramble about what resonates with me, what doesn't, and provide you with entertainment as you listen to me in the background as you actually live your life. If all of that sounds interesting to you, then please consider subscribing and ringing that bell for notifications for new videos because YouTube hates creators. Also, please consider supporting myself and the channel over on Patreon with different rewards on each tier, including access to my private Discord server, the Union of War, and Patreon exclusive content. Anyhow, let the chaos begin. When crafting your opening monologue, you want to ask yourself, what are the most important things that the audience needs to know about this world? What will hook them into the story, while also allowing them to engage with what is about to follow without being horrifically confused? For Avatar, those things are the elemental bending system, the foreign nations of this original high fantasy world, the war being waged by the Fire Nation, why the Avatar is so important and what's up with them, and why we should give a shit about any of this, namely through the narrator who actually has skin in the game. Once these pieces are all laid out, the audience will be able to be fully invested. We begin with 4 silhouetted characters showing off the unique magic system of bending.
Water, earth, fire, air.
Bending is an easily understandable concept that allows for rich complexity, not only providing flashy combat inspired by real-world martial arts, but also a source for the various cultures and philosophies that are explored in the show. Immediately, you understand characters in this world can manipulate one of the 4 elements, and they do so by performing martial arts. 3 of those silhouettes are also important characters that you will be able to recognize if you are a returning fan, but you don't need to know who they are to get what you need out of this.
My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old days, when the Avatar kept balance between the Water Tribes, Earth Kingdom, Fire Nation, and Air Nomads.
We then transition to the world map, which establishes that we are in a high fantasy world distinct from our own. It features different nations which each revolve around one of the 4 elements. There's some nuance here with the northern and southern water tribes and all the different air temples, but that's not something you really need to know out of the gate, and the show is gonna get into that pretty quickly, so negligible. The narrator is Katara, one of the main characters who is recounting this story as told to her by her grandmother. This allows the story to feel more personal, where a character we're going to be following explains how the plot has affected her and her family, and driving home how high the stakes are. Speaking of which, the main conflict in the show is the war being waged by the Fire Nation.
But that all changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
There are antagonists whose goal is to conquer the rest of the world, and they're on the verge of winning. They've disrupted the harmony between the four nations. Instinctively, your reaction is, let's fuck up those Fire Nation assholes, which gets you further invested in the story, while also establishing to you that whenever you see the Fire Nation army, it's usually bad news. The only person who can stop the Fire Nation is the Avatar, and it's because they're the only person who can wield all four elements.
Only the Avatar mastered all four elements. Only he could stop the ruthless firebenders.
You immediately understand who this legendary figure is, why they matter, and what their role in this conflict is. But you also learn why they haven't been able to stop the Fire Nation, because they mysteriously vanished 100 years ago.
But when the world needed him most, he vanished.
It introduces a mystery as to what happened to them, while also making it clear that their absence has allowed the Fire Nation to gain the upper hand in the war.
100 years have passed, and the Fire Nation is nearing victory in the war.
With this, the stakes have escalated. We desperately long for the Avatar to return, just like the people of the world. And we also now have a sense of the timeline and stakes, knowing that if this keeps up, the Fire Nation will win the war and likely wipe out the other nations. Katara establishes that she's from the Southern Water Tribe, making you feel for her as she reveals that her father, along with all the men of her tribe, have left to aid the Earth Kingdom in the war.
2 years ago, my father and the men of my tribe journeyed to the Earth Kingdom to help fight against the Fire Nation, leaving me and my brother to look after our tribe.
This allows us to understand who she is, as well as her brother Sokka, and how they've been affected by the war. It makes it much easier to empathize with them when the story switches to their perspective. But Katara still has hope. She believes that the Avatar will return, defeat the Fire Nation, and restore peace and balance to the world.
Some people believe that the Avatar was never reborn into the air nomads and that the cycle is broken. But I haven't lost hope.
Which you do too now, if this worked on you, and also immediately signals to the audience that we are about to watch all of that happen, and makes us stick around to see how exactly it's going to play out. All of this allows for a smooth transition into the rest of the premiere. We're more inclined to understand and root for Katara and Sokka, and when they meet Aang, we're likely to start putting the pieces together as to his real identity.
You're being an airbender and all? If you had any idea what happened to the Avatar. No. I didn't know him.
And when we see Zuko and Iroh and clock that they're part of the Fire Nation, we know that they're most likely going to be our antagonists.
Finally.
The opening monologue gives us everything we need to understand what's going on, who we're meant to root for and root against, and to sit back and enjoy the story as it unfolds before us. And it remains the series' opening sequence because it allows any viewer to tune into any episode, understand what the story is, and enjoy. Also, appreciation for the fact that the previously on segments are always entertaining, giving you the necessary information that you specifically need for that episode in particular. The previously on segments are their own very satisfying stories that make you go, ooh, we're in for something juicy this week. Avatar is considered a masterpiece for good reason. Not only does it tell a compelling, nuanced story with some of the best characters in all of fiction, but it also manages to communicate that story in an incredibly accessible, palatable way. A lot of the reason for the show's popularity, aside from its excellence, is just how digestible it is for even the most casual viewer who normally wouldn't fuck with all this high fantasy shit. Seriously, all you gotta do is just sit someone down and watch as the show does all of the work to get them on board. Literally, I've been introducing one of my friends to Avatar for the first time, and it immediately hooked her. Like, ooh, girl. It's really made me appreciate just how good the writing in Avatar is, to the fact that literally anyone can get into the show, and yet it still has this rich fucking complexity to where you can always get something new out of it. Seriously, the show ages like wine. I don't know what the fuck they put in this. Anyhow, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this from me, then be sure to subscribe and ring that bell for notifications of new videos, because again, YouTube hates creators. Also, please consider supporting myself and the channel over on Patreon. I'm the Unicorn of War, and Avatar's opening monologue is anything but a shit show.